You got to be ahead of what's changed in college football. That was a mismatch. Don't get me wrong. Georgia was awesome. Georgia's well coached. What happens sometimes when you say it's a talent mismatch, you act like they're not well coached. They're really well coached. But they also have really good players. Better players than TCU's players. And while TCU could make it work and find a way against Michigan, again, if we're honest, and I'm a Big 12 wonk, okay? I'm the guy sitting here telling you I love the Big 12. And with Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12, those schools should have been better, and Oklahoma has been better, and they've been competing on the national stage, but they've always come up a tad short. Many people point to the defensive lines being the difference. Texas and Oklahoma, they got the level of dudes. Why? Now it's NIL. It's NIL. And it's overall level of investment. And look, there's the other parts to it. Georgia is the state university in the state of Georgia. It's an incredible high school football state. They got an incredible tradition, though they hadn't won a national championship until last year in 40 years. With Mark Richt, they were always like one play away, one game away, and they still got down to Atlanta and played they just couldn't get over the hump. Even with Kirby, they couldn't get over the hump a couple years ago. Tua comes in, saves the day in the national championship game, right? Or in the SEC championship game? Yeah, SEC championship game. But the point is that Georgia was a sleeping giant. Now they've awoken, and they've awoken in the era of the NIL. And if you don't understand what's changed in college football, they have the triple whammy working for them. Okay? They have a bigger recruiting base because they're the state university in Georgia. They're well funded in the NIL as well as all their facilities and whatever. Okay? They have location, proximity to talent. Now they have the recent history of success and putting dudes in the NFL, and they're well funded. Like, that is what the sport is going to become. The haves and have-nots. And when the have-nots get an upset in a playoff, that's what it looks like when they get to a college football national championship game. TCU, in order to be competitive, would have had to play their absolute best game. They probably played one of their worst. Georgia would have had to play their worst game. They might have played their best. But guys were wide open. They were better coached and prepared, but also they just had better players. And in football, more so than basketball, because basketball, the SEC is recruiting Alabama, Arkansas. That's the story to what's happened in Kentucky. It's not just overtime elite. No, Alabama, Arkansas are recruiting at or above the level of Kentucky. Kentucky's got help on the way. But the NIL has balanced out the SEC, but there's no balance outside of the SEC versus the ACC. Like, what happened in the ACC in basketball? That happened. First, they hired great coaches. Paid them a bunch of money. Now they got the NIL. They're paying the kids a bunch of money, and they got better players than everybody else. I mean, Dan Byer, you were at the game. Did it look like two teams that were playing the same sport?
Yeah, it was something, Doug. The Stetson Bennett touchdown run early, TCU didn't even know he had the ball. And he ran for 15 to 20 yards. How about
the first touchdown throw?
Yeah.
Kids open by 30 yards.
Yes. It was. I had even said to our Fox Sports Radio colleague, Aaron Torres, who was also at the game, like TCU getting the ball first and having the miserable series, the 3-and-out, lost yardage, was really the worst thing that could happen. And then I realized when it was 38-7 at half that was probably about 10th on the list. Like, it was just, there was no match. And I think that there are a lot of factors for that reason. But yeah, it was a one-sided affair.
I mean, it was bad. It was like one of those sport. They play in a different sport, And I look, basketball a little bit different because of the 3-point line. You can spread teams out. You can like football. You can't block them, and you can't. They're more athletic. Yeah. They can cover more ground, and then John Ramos asked me before the show. He's like, "Well, TCU was missing their starting running back." Well, that's again the difference. The difference isn't necessarily your quarterback, because Big 12 schools have had great quarterbacks, and they've had great wide receivers. Okay, the difference is when you have one guy go down, the Georgias and the Alabamas, they're replacing them with a high school All-American who's a freshman or a sophomore and just hasn't gotten the carries. That's all. The depth of talent is obscene. And whereas everybody else can't hold on to their players, they can. Why? Because I'm paying more money. It's really that simple. You know?
Well, I'll tell you that. Just even that to the point of shorter running back. Michigan was down Blake Corum. Ohio State was down to their third running back that they had, and we're still able to fare, to that point of, there are guys that step up in that spot.
No question.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been the difference.
Look, I think Ohio State is in that discussion with the SEC in terms of how well funded, their recruiting base, their history, putting guys in the NFL. Ohio State is in the Big Ten, not of the Big Ten. I think Penn State is in that discussion, maybe a slight notch below, but James Franklin's an amazing recruiter. They have an amazing fan base. They have the NIL thing up and running pretty well. State of Pennsylvania still produces players. They can get into the South some. Look, kids, by and large, okay, when you take out cheating, by and large, they want to go somewhere where their parents can see them on TV, their parents can come to a game. Like, it's one of the reasons Notre Dame is genius. I think Notre Dame is going to be, because of its academic reputation, which is earned. It's a real university. But the thing is this, that Notre Dame, they're in that Michigan, a slight notch below the Ohio States and the SECs of the world. And maybe USC, I think, will probably be there as well. But for the most part, kids want to go where their parents can see them play. Their friends can come see them play. That's why Notre Dame has the ACC thing where you play Florida State or Miami every year. They also, they play SC every year or Stanford, so they're out in California. They're in California. They've been in Texas, playing Texas. They've been in Florida, and they're in Virginia, as well as, the Midwest. But it's really going to be the SEC, those top three schools in the Big Ten. You add in USC, so top four. And that's it. That's the sport. And the question is, who of the other programs can find a way to compete on a yearly basis? And I don't know the answer to it.
I think that there is a lot at play, and I think that there's going to be a discussion on what a 12-team playoff does. I heard stuff of the 12-team playoff would eliminate what we had last night. And then I also heard that now maybe there's no need to have 12 teams if there's only 3 good teams in college football. There are a lot of different sides to that. I think what also played out last night, Doug, is what shows you when you have a month to prepare for an opponent and when you have a week to prepare for an opponent. And I think that changes in the 12-team playoff as well. So maybe the cream does rise more to the top because you don't have a month to sit there and game plan and put absolutely everything together. And, your point about TCU maybe, playing a bad game and Georgia playing a really good game and that compared to what TCU did against Michigan, I think that all has to do with preparation, and what Ohio State was able to scheme up against Georgia. So those are the things that I think now the conversation has. And the one thing that I don't want to happen is now TCU to be the poster child of any program that isn't an Alabama, an Ohio State, or a Georgia, or a Michigan, or USC to have that they shouldn't be in the bracket. And that's what I actually feel bad about with TCU is now there's going to be this label, and now you got a new Big 12 conference where you're losing Oklahoma and Texas. And how much credit, how much is this game going to lend to that? I hope it doesn't do that. Maybe there's better ways to figure it out. Maybe the 12-team playoff ends up solving everything. But I just hope that's not the lasting image of, see, this is why you can't have a Big 12 school in a team in the national championship game, or this is why you can't have, a group of 5 school make a run. It's only got to be the SEC and the Big Ten. I hope it doesn't come to that point in college football because that would be a shame. Last night stunk. Last night was the worst possible matchup that you could have, I think, of the 4 teams. And 65-7 later, it brings us to this point today.
Dan, Doug, what'd you guys think of David Pollock being on the set right next to Nick Saban. I think it was at halftime. And he's like, yeah.
Hey, Jason, I was at the game.
Georgia's the program.
I was at the game.
Oh,
hey, man, I was at the game. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. I was at the game. I was at the game, man.
Did you at least catch the Twitter reaction to that?
I saw a TikTok of the slow-mo of it.
Yeah. Everyone was making a big deal that Pollock said that in Saban's face. And my thing was like, dude, he's given analysis, and he's basically giving kind of a homer take on his team.
Yes.
But he's not... Or do we expect him to measure those comments and not say them because he's sitting next to Nick Saban? I mean, is that what we expected in that moment? I just thought the whole thing was a big to-do.
Yes. And I say yes by basically agreeing with you that no, he shouldn't hold back. So my yes was actually a no. They have, and by the way, they've got scoreboard. Not only did they beat Alabama last year in the national championship, I know they lost in the SEC championship to Alabama last year, but they then were able to validate it with an undefeated season this year.